Greetings, YouTube. During the holiday week of Halloween, my wife and I had vacation off together. Something that we don't normally do. My wife has less vacation than I have, but we always arrange to have it that at that time because it's our wedding anniversary on Halloween. And as part of our a surprise for me during the vacation on November 1st, my wife and I went to Concord, New Hampshire, and we saw Alton Brown live. Now, those of you who don't know who Alton Brown is, he did a cooking show on television for, I don't know, 15 years, 14, 15 years. And he also has been involved in other cooking shows where he was judges and things like that. And he has a very humorous, very scientific slant on cooking. He goes after about how cooking works. He very much wants to know the nuts and bolts of what's going on, um, both because it interests him and because it allows him to produce food the same way every time, which is kind of nice. So for Alton, it's more science than art. So I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to expect with a live cooking show, entertainment slash event. And I didn't know about it until we arrived. It was a surprise. We were driving down the street looking for parking, and my wife and I looked over at the sign and I said, Alton Brown? So that's what we went and saw. And so it ended up being very much a food themed vaudeville act because there was the whole gamut of entertainment. There was singing, there was dancing, yes, actual dancing. There apparently is one woman in the Alton Brown troupe, and she knows how to tango, and apparently so does Alton. Um, and there was humor, of course. There was audience participation. They brought up both a woman and a man at different parts of the show to involve themselves with different aspects of science and food. And there were explosions. I'm not going to spoil it completely for you in case you're going to go see Alton Brown in his science tour, but it was relatively entertaining. I did enjoy myself. I did actually laugh a few times. The science was kind of cool. Alton Brown, by and large, was entertaining. He had a nice straight man. He had a keyboardist who not only was part of the band that plays music, well, they do the musical routines, but he also provides all of the sound effects. So he stays on the stage while the rest of the band takes off, and he provides the sound effects that Alton Brown needs during the show itself. And some of them were quite interesting because they're live sound effects in the sense that Alton Brown can cue a particular sound effect at any time just by doing something, and the guy has to watch him constantly. So when he does this thing, he cues the right sound effect. So it was quite well done. They had a nice dynamic there. I have no idea what Alton's like in real life. Of course, he could be unbearable. He has been divorced twice, so maybe that's a sign that living with Alton isn't the easiest thing in the world. So I think all in all, it was a positive experience, and if you get a chance to go see Alton Brown, I recommend it, with one caveat. Now, Alton Brown is 2 years older than me, two, so he and I are essentially the same age. I'm 53, he's 55. And it is sad to see that he's become an old man. And what do I mean when I say he's become an old man? He was lamenting a time period during this show when a parent could use a belt to beat a child. He was looking back upon that fondly. He was doing the old man curmudgeon thing where he's like, well, if we were allowed to beat children, the world would be a better place. No, it wouldn't be a better place. In fact, the fact that the world is a horrible place right now is because parents are allowed to beat children. These things are cyclic. These things go from generation to generation, passing the bullshit down the line, making our society horrible. So beating children is not the answer. Being a good parent is an answer, which is remarkably difficult to do. And so people like to have shortcuts. And to them, a shortcut is violence. But it's not a shortcut. It just means you're passing that violence on to the next generation. Okay? So I was somewhat distraught to see Alton Brown cracking jokes about beating children and the audience eating it up. That made me very uncomfortable. But thankfully, it was brief. He didn't return to that particular theme. It was only one bit of the act, and then he moved on to other things. There was also some bits where he was playing with homophobic themes, um, which I thought was also a little bit questionable. He's like spooning a guy on stage, sitting behind him with his arm wrapped around him, cracking jokes about the fact that, you never thought you'd be spooned by a man on stage now, did you? And it was just like, okay, we didn't need that either. All right? The guy consented to be touched. That's okay. You don't have to sexualize something which is not sexual. We didn't need that. He also played loose with the science in the sense that, well, be careful or there's bad things going to happen. And the bad thing he was describing was just BS. It was not going to happen because the science of the world would tell you that nothing bad was going to happen. But it made good entertainment. It made things seem more dynamic than they were. So all in all, I did enjoy the show. I'm not saying I would rush back out to see it again because I would be surprised if he had too much else to do with those particular themes. Though, of course, with a different audience participation, maybe the dynamic would change. I don't know. I will say that it was a surprisingly white audience, and I'm not sure if there were anybody of color in that stage crew. It was a surprisingly white environment. Well, it is New Hampshire, but yeah. I guess I would like to see maybe a little more diversity in your stage crew. Elton, you have that power. You are in charge. But yeah, so all in all, it was fun. I recommend you checking it out if you're into food and science and humor and kind of like a vaudeville vibe. And it was definitely a pleasant surprise.